Yep.
All right.
Great.
It's okay.
So the first paragraph of the purpose and scope statement is really meant to introduce the intent of this project, which would be to serve as a planning tool for current and future wellhead protection activities, climate forecasting, and population growth demand. Both the aquifer and the aquifers exchange with the surface water bodies. So is that purpose, does that encapsulate the purposes that we have discussed previously at other meetings? Is there any other purpose that the IWAC members would like to see included in that?
I have a question, and I think it's probably for Dan, or really for like the SAJB. And I know that there's a proposal. I understand that GSI has prepared a proposal to update the wellhead protection model for that particular effort. And so this is something separate that would complement that wellhead protection modeling effort that's being proposed to the SAGB. So I'd like to understand how these studies resonate, if they do, and just if there's a connection.
Yeah. Dan, would you be able to answer that for us? You're muted right now, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, it never fails. I'm always guilty of hitting the wrong button at the wrong time. Yeah, I'll take a swipe at that for you, Rob. A lot of the updates to the SAJB model is to get it out of the old microfilm model, which is, first of all, no longer supported. Put it into the ModFlow USG version, and also by doing so allows that to enable some additional gridding to be installed, which would then be more accurate in wellhead protection areas for that. So a lot of that work is probably more centered around the SAJB members' wells and well sites, and not across all of the aquifer on the Washington side. Also, there is going to be some items in that as well as particular to them when we talk about demand and intakes from, and also adding additional well sites that may have been developed since the last model that was designed for them.
Okay. So just so I understand, Dan, thank you very much. I understand transferring from microfilm into the ModFlow, and that that effort be more focused on individual water providers' wells and systems. And it sounds like it's kind of a finer point. And then this IWAC study be more comprehensive.
Yes.
It would be more comprehensive in that too, Rob. As you probably are well aware, the original USGS was just a single layer model. The updated model, I believe, is like 8 layers, which would probably produce some better information around wellhead capture. Should anybody on any other future well sites may want to develop something specifically for their utility or what have you.
Thank you.
So getting back to the first sentence of the scope, is there any elements that we previously discussed that should be included in this? In reviewing my notes, my hope was that we did encapsulate everything that we wanted to bring into it in the first sentence, but is there anything anyone has seen that has been forgotten?
I think it's straightforward.
Okay. And then I think the second sentence I need to give Alyssa the credit for the second sentence. Thank you, Alyssa. But she had a great point that I think it's important to bring the 2007 model in to this paragraph as context to state that that model was really created in response to concerns about impacts of increased groundwater withdrawals resulting from recent and projected urban growth. So it really didn't provide the data that we're looking for now to accomplish our goals. And essentially that's why we want to move forward with this project. Does everyone feel comfortable with that?
Suzanne, I think just to comment on that sentence, I took that out of the abstract for the 2007 model too. So it's just a good summary of what that was, which I feel just sets the stage.
Right. Rob, did you have a comment?
So I'm just going to paraphrase as I understand it, and I seek a response from those who know more about this than me to either tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong. And I'm finding that I'm wrong a lot. The previous bi-state model was really more about water quantity and the interaction of the aquifer and the river, and looking at and potentially considering long-term trends and impacts, how long-term impacts on the quantity and what the specific impacts are to certain reaches of the river based on use. What I'm reading here is like this is what this is focused now on water quality, on wellhead protection. That's what that's what the focus is on.
I think it definitely does focus on water quality, but also forecasting for water quantity in the future.
Okay.
For population growth and climate change scenarios.
All right. Well, I'm seeing a lot here. Well, I guess project objective is wellhead protection. So, and it is fine with me. I love wellhead protection. It was going on for, I mean, obviously that's the foundation of the SHAB. And then for years, the city of Spokane, Doug Greenland, carried that for quite a while. Lloyd, and all those meetings with the county and the city of the valley to try to take that wellhead protection to the next level. So is that where this is going?
I think that's one of the directions it's going, but I think my understanding from our previous discussion that there's also a desire to look at forecasting for population growth demand,
Sure.
as well as potential climate change, and maybe using an updated model to more accurately forecast the impacts to the aquifer from the increased water quantity.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I'm not muted this time. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably second that. I mean, we look at the kind of the project scope and introduction, and really that last sentence kind of speaks to that, because it is still in response to the increased demand that we're seeing, and probably some shifts in demand from agricultural more to residential that have been occurring. So really, we still want to better understand what the impacts are from inflows and outflows of the aquifer with that increased demand, and help us get a grasp on what that might look with some climate scenarios as well. So I would say yes, in part water quality, Rob, but I still think there's a large feature of quantity here is also.
Thank you, and I support both.
Okay.
I was just seeking confirmation of that. I'm not
Yeah.
questioning what's going
No,
on.
no,
here.
I'm not
I'm just trying
detecting
to
that
better
at all.
understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's really wonderful for me to hear the comments that you had just reading this today, because it mirrors what other people's comments may be, and hearing that is actually very helpful in trying to produce a final statement. So I was kind of thinking in the back of my head that maybe we should have done the introduction last. Do you remember that old school of writing? You always write the introduction last. Maybe we should have reviewed
I
it
know,
last.
know what you're gonna say before you say it.
You know? So, okay, well, maybe we should move on to the second paragraph, which really defines how the model is going to be updated. And this is where it speaks to the project scope of utilizing the mod flow, which is the three-dimensional numerical groundwater flow model to simulate groundwater flow into the aquifer. And I think this is very helpful in also delineating out why updating the aquifer in mod flow is going to be beneficial in helping us meet the purpose statement and the project goals. So, Seth, do you have any?
No, I think it's great. That's a great
Okay.
answer.
Okay. And so this also helps incorporate that multi-layer approach and how it provides a higher accuracy of data as well. Essentially, how we're going to get there. IG, do you have anything? Alyssa or Dan, do you have anything you want to add to this paragraph? Any comments?
No, no comments. Looks good.
Okay. All right, so then we move on to the three primary objectives. And the first is more of a water quality. So it is utilizing the multiple layers within the updated model to further refine the wellhead capture zones to support the enhanced wellhead protection activities. And this helps to provide a greater definition of how we would achieve those wellhead protection activities through identification of the capture zones and being able to overlay those within a GIS system. So, any questions on that one? Discussion?
I just have a comment. I think this the wellhead protection portion, at least for perspective of the Idaho side, I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor to do. Something that always gets brought up. I don't say it out loud too often, but if you look at the time of travel and source water delineations for, particularly in the Idaho side, it doesn't, I wouldn't say suffer, but that's kind of the word that comes to mind. It kind of suffers from a problem of lack of scale, and that you'll see, depending on which well it is, the 5, 10 year, 15 year time of travel to each particular wellhead might not actually reflect, the ground scenario. Just because it suffers from a lack of scale. You'll see one well, the huge kind of source area overlying a smaller one, or one that has similar characteristics, just tweaking small numbers. But the Raffin Prairie Aquifer, the value, changing different values widely changes the shape of, quite drastically. So I think if you do something to this scale, it'll kind of give a better view, or let's say depiction of source water and wellhead protection, at least for the Idaho side. So currently, you go to the source water website now, and you can see some depictions that look like they might have conflicts of interest. Why is this source water for this well look like this versus one that's very cut and paste, but the source water delineation is actually quite different from its depiction. So I think that just suffers from trying to make something like a big picture figure of what's going on in the Idaho side from source water delineations. You wouldn't be able, it's kind of like a mosaic. Like you can't use the mosaic of each individual well to kind of draw a good picture of what's going on with a certain flow. The flow paths are very kind of piecemeal. It doesn't work as a cohesive unit. So updating this model and using a different scale, or just being able to use the scale of this model from an outreach point of view, it's going to be very useful, at least for us in Idaho. Like I said, in your free time, go to the Idaho DEQ source water. Again, it's all done by hydrogeologists in the state office. They have they have several folks that do these models, and it's very, it does its job on a statewide scale. But specifically for the Rathbury Aquifer, it kind of looks like a collage. It doesn't. It's just very like the lines aren't smooth. They're very octagonal, so to speak. It's very like
I see
doesn't
them, I
depict.
know.
Yeah, doesn't depict what actually is going to go on from a large regional scale. So you wouldn't be able to take a snip, a cut and paste of that and say this is actually what's going on using all this well data, just because they're all different scales, and it's very, like I said, collage-esque if you're trying to use it. So you could be misused if you're trying to make a regional depiction of what's going on. If you're not using 2007 scale or something.
I would be interested in reaching out to the DEQ source water program to find out if they would be willing to utilize this model in future delineations because of that accuracy set.
Right. Yeah. Again, they might. Again, for them, it's probably a lack of funding. They do delineation for each system, and that's what they're kind of charged with. And they do the job, right? But there's no 200 square mile scale depiction of what's going on. So it's around there.
So I think too that one of the tools for this is that purveyors would be able to complete their own models for wellhead protection. Is that correct, Dan? Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree with that. 100%.
More discussion on this portion or comments, changes, edits? Online good? Okay. So then the second project objective would be forecasting climate change and population growth demands on the aquifer and its exchanges with surface water sources. So Rob, I think this portion of it would get more into water quantity.
Oh, it totally does. And I recognize that my comment earlier, I just didn't get that far down into it. But I will say that the introduction doesn't really address that.
And I wonder, I'm really glad you brought it up because I wonder if maybe we can refine the introduction to bring this out more. So
Well,
that we don't
I
lose
think for
people.
those who, and maybe if we're going out to funders or, seeking support, I think the introduction needs some verbiage in that.
Mhm.
I didn't pick up.
That's really good feedback for me too. I appreciate that.
Nonetheless, it's very well written.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I understand that John Porcello and I helped us ghostwrite this.
Okay.
Yes, which was great. Really great. We were fortunate to have that. So any other comments on the forecasting climate and population growth demand? Any thoughts, changes, input?
mean, it's always really hard. I
It
mean, you
is.
read it now and you go, gosh, that concept, I love it. And, down the road at some point, then when we're, actually getting into word by word, what it really means when you're scoping something out, and you kind of go, oh, gosh, maybe we want this.
Right.
It's hard to see that.
Well, I think when we finished reviewing it today, what I thought would be worthwhile is for everyone to take it with them, take it home, maybe spend the next month before the meeting sending me email comments as well, and I can get that all compiled into a final draft. But at least this gives us a chance to have some discussion. I wish I could have gotten it to you all earlier.
Gosh,
With the holidays, it got a little
yeah, give yourself a little bit of slack.
tricky. So moving on, the other would be, the last objective would be to include the Spirit and Hidden Valleys. And I know that Alyssa has a much better handle on this, and Seth may also have a better handle on this than I do. But essentially, the 2007 model didn't include the Spirit Lake and Hidden Valleys. And so essentially, when we look at that model, that really is somewhat of an unknown. And by updating the model, it would give us the opportunity to turn the grids on in those areas and potentially look at some possible additional supply that hadn't previously been included. Alyssa, do you have any input on that you could offer or Seth?
I just want to point out, I think it's just important to address it because at least for the Idaho side, those areas are, sparsely developed, but that's likely to change. Just having a key on that. Again, it's just one of those unknowns that I think, should be addressed. The sole source destination or the sole source boundary there is, literal straight lines. It's at the time. So still sort of in that area, obviously a little more data updated, more wells drilled in the area, but sort of calibration on what's going on over there.
I understand. I would agree. Any other thoughts?
Have we reached the base floor over there with any of the wells? Has anyone found the bottom?
Kevin actually was the remediation manager in Coeur d'Alene office. He actually mentioned some projects potentially that might shed some light on it. There are some wells drilled pretty deep, but
Yeah.
that's in the context of soil work.
Yeah.
Not carbon resource.
I mean, any hard bottom is good data for this type of thing.
Yes.
And I think that's what was missing up in there was full penetration to the bottom of the water.
It's my understanding from talking to John Porcello that the model of the Ratchet Aquifer took into consideration well depth as the bottom. Is that correct?
I'm sure it is. But we all know that that's not the case.
So I guess what I propose is I will take a crack at trying to update our introductory paragraph to include more of an emphasis on water quantity as well as quality within the project scope. And then if everybody could take a harder look at this over the next few weeks and send me comments, I will refine the draft and have a final draft to present to you in February. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay. Work on that. Any other comments before we move on? So I know there was some discussion about CEU training on the SBRPA model update. And I think I heard when I listened to the recording from December that somebody might be reaching out to see if we could be part of the truck rodeo? Is that true?
Well, I
Yeah.
think the truck rodeo has already set their classes in for submission for CEUs. So I don't know that we would be able to put anything there yet.
Okay,
But I'm going to the subsection meeting on Thursday. And it was kind of my hope, I think somebody mentioned at the last meeting to potentially partner with them. They have a great distribution list and also an online registration portal all set up, for that type of class. So it might be something that IWAC might consider is partnering with the Inland Empire subsection to see if that's something they would want to do.
that sounds great, Dan. So would it be a class that would be scheduled, like an independent type of training class that was advertised through Inland Empire?
Through Inland Empire and IWAC, I imagine, I won't speak for Jeremy, but SAJB might even throw out a little blurb about it.
Yeah, that'd be easy. We love filling up people's inboxes. My inbox is not.
And I think me too, if we were going to do this, it would be great. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it would be great to get CEUs for it as well. Dan, did you say that Washington had a 0.3 minimum or a 0.6?
0.3.
Okay,
And I believe it's the same for Idaho as well.
it
And
is.
that process generally takes, they say 6 weeks this time of year. It's been a little easier to probably get things through, and I'm happy to assist with that once we get settled on some speakers and topics.
Okay. Sounds good. So how about maybe we wait to see what you find out from Inland Empire AWWA, and then maybe at the next meeting, we can talk about speakers and topics.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. And then moving on to new business, the 2024 budget. Oh, yes.
Sorry, this is Amy with Spokane County. I had a quick question about the training, if that's okay.
Yes.
So is this training, operator training on how to use the model, or just about the model update to kind of let them know it's coming, or?
That's a great question. This would be more of an informational training to talk about the model.
Okay, is there any thought towards actual training for model use or after it's developed?
I think that would be a great idea, Amy.
Yeah, because I'm realizing I'm relatively new to the county, but we have several mod flow type models for different areas like the SVRP, but it doesn't seem that anyone has, gone into training to be able to implement them or to use them for our own like kind of curiosity or research. So I think that would be something so that these models don't just kind of sit on the shelf and not get used very much.
That is great input. Thank you. I've made a note of that. Any other thoughts on classes? It could be sponsoring. Dan, are you still with us? Oh, yep, there you are. Did John say he might be willing to come over and speak?
Yeah, he said he could make himself available to speak at a class. Yeah.
Okay. Not to put you on the spot, but were there other individuals that said they might be willing to? we talked previously about having some of the history behind IWAC and then having some discussion on that revolved around the purpose statement. I'm drawing a blank now if we had other speakers that we might.
Well, I know that we talked a little bit to see if maybe Stan Miller was available.
Okay.
Actually, not to throw him under the bus, but Mr. Lindsay has an innate skill set and knowledge of the aquifer and all items water resources.
Okay.
Sorry, Rob.
Yay.
Well, thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. If what little I know can help people out, I'm happy to share.
Okay. All right. So how about for the next meeting, I work on a draft agenda? Because I imagine we will need a draft agenda to submit or. How you doing, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Okay. I will work on that. Okay. So I think any more on that? Just moving right along today.
Yeah.
That's good. Tony B, did you want to talk a little bit about the budget and media campaign for the aquifer protection and conservation for next year or this year?
Sure, happy to.
Is your voice okay?
Yeah, just so
Okay.
don't make me laugh because then I start coughing.
Okay, okay.
So Jay, if you'll let me share my screen. It's not showing up all of my PDFs. Hang on a second. I have them here. Oh, and it won't let me do that while I'm recording, of course. Let's see, I might have to stop recording. Sorry, I'm